Well, it all comes down to this, folks. We're one game away. It's always bittersweet. The college basketball season is coming to an end so quickly, Brad. And we touched on it a little last week, but this was a season that just blew by. I remember recording our preview pods. I feel like it was yesterday, and now we're wrapping this thing up. We're talking, way too early 25s. I mean, it's gonna be a fun off season, but it's always sad to see college basketball end. And I know you're a big look ahead guy, but even you can't be psyched to see hoops end for several months.
No, I'm always looking ahead because that's how these coaches have to build these teams. They have to look ahead. So I feel like it's appropriate to look ahead too, because they have to consider those things. When trying to build the best team possible. But I mean, Final Four, we had two great games. I don't think anyone doubted that the games were going to be good. A lot of people, myself included, were kind of deflated that like Duke wasn't in for like kind of the Zion buzz, because the games didn't have a lot of buzz, despite having some of college basketball's best players. Between Cassius Winston, Ty Jerome, Jared Culver. Jared Harper is probably the less known out of those four, even among college basketball fans, but he's one of my favorite players to watch in the entire country. So there was star power, but when you had such a mega star like Zion, the fact that they missed out, it just didn't quite live up buzz-wise. Haven't seen the ratings yet. I assume the ratings will come out on Monday. It'll be interesting to see the comps from last year. But ratings or not, we had two excellent games. I'm sure we're going to have a very competitive championship game tomorrow night.
Yeah, I mean that was the name of the game for me. It was like, I love trying to like drive interest in college basketball amongst like casual sports fans, but like at the same time, it's like March Madness takes over and people watch March Madness. Like, at this point, you're not grabbing like when you're stealing Final Four viewers. Like at this point, like anyone who cares about sports was watching the Final Four, right? Like no one who likes sports a lot wasn't watching the Final Four. So I don't get like the overblown narrative of like, oh, like Zion, like I don't get like, oh, without Zion, like we're not fine. I mean, all it does is like the casual sports fan who like wants to be able to engage in office debate doesn't watch the Final Four. And like that's a huge part of the nation, but it's also like I don't really care about that group of people. I mean, and it sucks, but like that's kind of where we're at, right? Like we like the sport like can't cater to that. Like I think Pete Thamel's argument in that article that got kind of panned this morning was like college basketball world needs buzz about it, and there was no buzz about this Final Four, and the less stars we'll have once the one and done is gone will make it even worse. And the level of play will drop because teams won't have as much talent, so they'll run more like slow stuff like Virginia and Texas Tech run. And like, I don't know if I buy that. Like, I don't know that you have to run like not run pick and roll and like do all this stuff, because like Auburn has, Jared Harper would not be a prep to pro. Bryce Brown was a 4-year guy. Like Purifoy, Macklemore, like none of these guys were prep to pro guys, and they play a fun style. Like if you had paired Auburn with, I don't know, North Carolina, who wouldn't have had anyone prep to pro, like Kobe White would not have gone prep to pro. That game would have been absurd. Like we saw that in two rounds ago. That was a super fun basketball game to watch. It was a blowout, but it was a very exciting tempo and style. So I don't understand this like, oh, like the style of play is going to be ruined by kids going prep to pro.
Yeah, here's where I stand on it is I think that we should care about trying to get as many viewers as possible for like the health of the sport, especially year round. I talk about a lot that we need to find ways to get people who are not even casual sports fans, like actual sports fans, interested in some of these intriguing November and in December college basketball games. And, maybe gambling will help with that. But I think that's always needs to be on the forefront of hopes, and kind of what you root for is for college basketball to be as healthy and as relevant as possible. And I don't think anyone is denying, without the one and done, that's going to hurt college basketball. Like it won't kill college basketball. Like it won't be the end of the world. It probably won't even be a big deal, but we will lose, 8 to 10 of the best players in the sport every year, which inherently is going to make, have have a trickle down effect. There's going to be less talent. Something also pretty relevant that relates a proposed rule change that when you take a grad transfer, it would take up a scholarship the next year as well. So you would essentially be penalized. So you would really have to weigh which grad transfers you take. It would have to be only the best, like your Reed Travises and your Matt Mooney's of the world, because you're going to lose a scholarship on the back end. That would be a disaster. That would be 10 times worse than eliminating the one and done rule. Because I was using this example the other day, but like a guy like Rajon Tucker, right? He has this huge year at Arkansas Little Rock, right? But they still stink. I haven't checked their Ken Palm in a while, but I think it was in like the 260s. Let's say that they bring everybody back, including Tucker. Maybe they're like the 180th team. Maybe they improved by 80 spots. But that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't help college basketball at all that Little Rock, went from 260 to 180th, right? But if Tucker can go and he can improve a team like a Kansas State, who could go from being like the bottom of the Big 12 to like a bubble team, or even like a North Carolina, who could go from like a top 20 team to like a top 10 team, that does so much more for the sport. And, trying to consolidate more of the talent and make the best teams in college basketball, like the top 100 or so teams, better, that will help the sport and help compensate for the loss of the one and done kind of trickle down effect.
No, I didn't read a lot of that grad transfer proposal. I was under the impression that it was, if the player doesn't graduate, then you lose the scholarship. But if they do graduate, you keep it. So I mean that's hard to incentivize,
Right, because I think most graduate programs are 2 years long.
Right. And
there's no way that someone who's going to grad transfer to a high major program can go play professionally somewhere. There's no way that they're going to lose a year without eligibility to finish up their master's.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, it's not good. It's a stupid idea.
It's a disaster.
I understand the question of like why like we shouldn't have a grad transfer rule that's like just like creating the Wild West for every kid that graduates, and like everyone leaves and like transfers up, and like I understand people being like that sucks and we shouldn't do it, but it's also like at some point we just have to reward the kids. That's kind of where I stand on it. It's like the kids if a kid wants to grad transfer after he finishes his degree, I have no issue with it. Like at some point, like when a coach is recruiting you, the time is for until you graduate. It shouldn't be like, oh, you're stuck here forever. And kind of making that rule would be, brutal. I'm debating whether it'd be worse than a sit one, play one. Because the sit one, play one, you at least get to develop them.
Yeah, that is true.
But I mean, I guess with also the sit one, play one, like if you were a team that like felt you could win like if you're a mid-major team and there's like a grad transfer average 6 a game at a high major school, but he's willing to come down and like he's the big man you need, you absolutely take him for the 2 years scholarship, even though like it costs you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you're like if Siena could get like the 4-man that changes them from like decent MAC team like contending for the favorite to like the clear favorite, you obviously take it. You just don't take like the average. You just don't take Brayden Bayer, who they took this year, who is like he was like a walk on from Syracuse. So they were like, well, we'll take him as a scholarship guy because like he had played in the NCAA tournament, and like if he helps, he helps. If he doesn't, it's like get the scholarship back. All it does is take opportunity away from those kids, and like or like kids who are like fringe guys just want to play on a mid major. Like I don't know. I just think it's dumb.
Because I think that the way that the rules currently set up, teams should be looking more often in that, kind of like what Xavier did. They did a young team and they added 3 grad transfers. One who really helped their team in Hankins. The other 2 guys, Wellage and Castlin, they were rotation guys. They weren't like huge difference makers. Xavier's probably not that much worse if they gave one of their freshmen more time than Kyle Castlin. I mean, Castlin was a good defender, but from a long-term view, maybe they would have been better off giving like a Keontae Kennedy or Elias Harden more minutes. But I think it's important to get those veterans in there And the way that the rules currently set up, it doesn't hurt you. You take a flyer on a guy who you think can maybe play a role, and if it doesn't work out, he's gone when the year's over anyway, and you can try again next year. I know Purdue kind of started their whole resurgence. I think they didn't have a point guard, so they got John Okius from Colorado State, and then PJ Thompson was a freshman when Okius was a grad transfer. The next year, they felt Thompson wasn't quite ready. They grabbed Spike Albrecht, and then Thompson was able to take over that point guard spot. So it's great for kind of bridging young talent. It undeniably makes a lot of these teams better. I mean, you look at Kentucky, where they would be without Reed Travis this year, and I mean Texas Tech with Owens and Mooney, and Travis didn't even quite live up to expectations. So I think it undeniably helps college basketball, and I feel like a lot of people who I've seen that are against it, they're also for paying the players or like player empowerment, and it's just a huge contradiction to be for restricting grad transfers, yet being pro player. And it's just, I think that people's natural tendency to root for the underdog, and they see these mid-major teams as underdogs, and they don't want them to lose their players to these advantaged high major teams, even though it would directly hurt the players that they want to help.
Yeah, no, I totally buy that. It's like, it's just so weird. Like, it's like people make arguments to fit their narrative. Like we've talked about it so much on the pod. We could talk about it every podcast. Like everyone fits everyone fits every rule and every debate into what they want in college basketball. And if their thing is like mid-major prosperity, then they're going to fit everything into how do you help a mid-major team. But then if you're like if it's like you just want the best teams to be the best, like then you like I think you always come down on like how do we make the best team the best, right?
How do we make college basketball better and more viable long term?
Right. Yeah. So like I mean from that perspective, then you're like, yeah, like why would we restrict this? Like I don't think like who does restricting the grad transfer benefit?
It helps, Arkansas, Little Rock have a slightly better chance at winning the Sun Belt as like a 5 seed.
Right. It holds star players longer at mid-major. But it doesn't even like does Ray John Tucker not grad transfer up? Right? Like I don't even think it helps that. I think it helps like obviously Columbia can't keep 5th-year guys, but it helps like Columbia keep Quentin Adlesh. It doesn't help like Little Rock keep Ray John Tucker. Yes,
that's true. It's like the more fringe guys, like your Kyle Castlin,
maybe like
your Greg Malinowski,
Right. Yeah, I don't get it. I don't totally get it. I just don't think it helps enough people for it to be worth what it hurts. So I mean, we can talk about this throughout the offseason. I don't think it's going to pass personally, but we'll see.
So some good meta talk, but talking more specifically about the games, Texas Tech, Michigan State, Tarek Owens, unbelievably active defensively. He was all over the place. And then Mooney with, one of the games of his life, always been like a steady veteran guard. He comes out hitting outside shots, hitting his little mid-post fadeaway, which, I mean, maybe he was only like 2 for 6 on those, but he had a couple big ones when he was going. And Texas Tech clearly looked like the better team over Michigan State. I was surprised. I mean, it seems like Nick Ward's injury really set him back. He lost the starting spot to Tillman. I thought it was really only going to be nominal, but it seemed like he didn't have his kind of full energy, full potential, full skill set for this game.
Yeah, I think he's a little out of shape. He's always kind of teetering there. I think he's out of shape and his hands aren't right, and that makes all the difference. I thought Tech did a really good job of. So I kind of related to the way that teams guarded Jalen Pickett at times last year, where like Siena, like, the only guy who could make a play for Siena was Jalen Pickett, and so it started off like they would just double him, and then teams realized maybe that's not the best solution. What you do instead is you jump passing lanes and you force him to beat you as a scorer. And I thought Texas Tech did some of that with Cassius Winston, like the idea being we'll let you beat us by scoring 40, but we're not going to let you beat us by getting 12 assists to like open threes for McQuaid. And I thought that was a pretty good strategy. It helped that, Michigan State didn't really hit shots, and they can, and Texas Tech does an unbelievably good job of contesting. No, I would agree. Texas Tech was the better team. I was so kind of floored by how good Tariq Owens was. I mean, we've talked about Tariq Owens being a pretty good player all year. This isn't new, but I think it was kind of a great reminder of evaluating context in watching a player. Like Tariq Owens in the context of Texas Tech's elite defense and like the freedom that they give him and like the confidence that they give him to do all of those things, like to like chase blocks and come over on the weak side wildly and like make that absurd play on the lob, like stuff like that was like the perfect system for him. And at like St. John's, where there was absolutely no defensive structure, and like no offensive structure either, he was just like you didn't like Tariq Owens. You thought he was like a long range trucker who like did a lot on the weak, like got some weak side blocks. I remember us talking about him. It was like the context with which he's being deployed is just so much better at Tech. I think that was a really interesting reminder. It was also a fun reminder that Matt Mooney could have been at Northwestern this year. Northwestern would have made the tournament with Matt Mooney as their point guard. And I'm not exaggerating. I don't think it was that far off.
Yeah, in terms of Owens, I'm looking at where I had him on my grad transfer ranking now. I had him as the 14th best grad transfer, so right behind Trey Porter, Ryan Luther, and Zach Johnson, and right ahead of Christian Mekawulu, Ronnie Harrell, Terrence Smith. Mm-hmm. The thing that I didn't like about Owens was, I mean, he certainly showed a lot of flashes at St. John's. He would have a couple wow plays, and last year St. John's defense was really, really good. It was their offense. When Marcus Levet bailed, they only had one creator, and their offense kind of sputtered. But they had a great defense, and he was a great part of it. He blocked shots, super high energy guy, makes plays. On the offensive end, he was kind of a little wild. He would shoot way too many jump shots, but his percentage was okay. So I had a lot of Texas Tech fans in the preseason telling me that they got this stretch 4 or like stretch 5 in Tariq Owens. So slow down there, right? You don't want Tariq Owens, firing up threes. But he hit one yesterday, and you mentioned in Texas Tech scheme, really enhanced his value, and he was a huge part of their success. It's interesting because Tech starts out with playing the two bigs together, Tariq Owens and Lorenzi Odiazde. And if you had told me in the preseason that those guys were going to play together and that Texas Tech would be in the national championship game, I would have fallen off my chair. But I mean, I think most of the time they went with either Culver or a Corpru at the 4. Mostly Culver in the more important games. But that's another huge part of their team. They can go big, they can go small. They have that physicality look, but then they also have that small look when you get guys like Moretti and Mooney who can make plays, who can handle the ball, along with Culver with his great size at that small ball 4. Really made two different unique looks. And then Kyler Edwards, super underrated freshman. He was certainly a surprise where he was ranked. And it seems like Chris Beard has kind of found that's 3 straight freshmen that have been outside the top 150 and have really impressed despite that low ranking.
Right. I mean, Chris Beard is a machine. Like at this point, like everything he's touching is turning to gold. I mean, and we talk a lot about not just randomly buying into teams, but I think there's an exception of like randomly buying into a scheme that translates well. So for instance, like one of the reasons I bought so much Virginia stock last year was I was like, the worst thing they'll be is an elite defensive team and slightly worse on offense than they've been in the past, which still makes them a top 20 team. But if they're as good on offense, if not better, they're a top 10, top 5, maybe top 1 team in the country. And that's what they were. And I think Texas Tech, I'm similarly confident in their defense next year. Even if they lose Culver, which they will, and they're going to lose Owens, and they'll lose Brandon Francis and Mooney. Like, they'll lose a lot. But, I mean, I kind of just have general trust that they'll be fine defensively. And I have pretty strong belief that they'll be pretty decent offensively with the amount of talent they're bringing in from the recruiting class with Jamius Ramsey, a fringe 5-star, Terrence Shannon. They'll bring back Kyler Edwards, who I think is going to be really good. I think they'll go grab a grad transfer or two. I mean, I think they will be just fine.
So in the preseason, I had Texas Tech in the low 30s. I had them, I think, around 33. And the Texas Tech fans that were getting on me for that, they were right. I was looking back at a lot of my early season predictions from last year. I actually got most of them right. The big one I got wrong, the Texas Tech, way too low, obviously. I had Texas higher than Texas Tech, which a lot of Texas Tech fans were not happy about. So they got a 2-for-1 there, and then Maryland, obviously. But the reason why I had Texas Tech in the 30s, right? You will look at their team now. Mooney, we could expect that he was as good as he played this year. Culver was better than we anticipated. The fact that Odiaze and Owens could play together effectively. Edwards being a lot better, and then Moretti was not good last year. He was a freshman. He was the backup point guard. He was not good, right? He took an enormous leap forward this year, and then Francis was about the same. But it's Culver's improvement, emergence of Edwards, the fact that Owens and Odiaze could play together, and then I think the biggest reason of them all was Moretti becoming a really really strong point guard. So they had shot makers, they had a great defense, and that really combined, for really really impressive team. Next year though, they don't have any size right now. So I mean, maybe they go after a grad transfer big, but they could do a lot of interesting things. They have some great athletes. They have Kayvon Moore, who missed this year with an injury, former top 50 recruit. He's kind of like a point forward type, pretty good athlete, could play that power forward spot. Deshaun Corprew was a very highly rated recruit. He was a rotation player this year. Maybe within another year in the program, he could take a step forward. Then Khalid Thomas, who I think if next year started today, he'd probably be their starting center. He's like an athletic 4-man. So they're gonna have a different look. They're gonna be long. They're gonna be athletic, and they should still have enough shooting with Moretti and Edwards and Ramsey as you mentioned.
I mean, and I also just kind of want to note what kind of rare air that Davide Moretti's in. If he makes one field goal over 50% tomorrow night, he'll be a 50-40-90 guy. And not just a 50-40-90 guy, a 50-46-90 guy. I mean, just an absolutely elite offensive player in terms of his efficiency, combined with basically 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. I mean, that was an absolutely huge part of Texas Tech's breakout. I will definitely agree there.
And then see, in terms of Michigan State, I mean, they got some nice performances throughout the tournament from different guys at different times. Between Gabe Brown with his hot shooting, he's a great long-term piece for them. Aaron Henry had a great game. He made some plays, and he had a few great games in the early rounds of the tournament as well. So that's a great future 3-4 for them. Tillman was one of the breakout. He's like half a breakout guy. He didn't quite get enough minutes to fully be a breakout guy, but next year I think he could really explode and kind of establish himself as one of the best centers in college basketball. The key for Michigan State this year will be the same as next year, and that'll be Cassius Winston. If he comes back, Michigan State's top 4 team at worst. If he leaves, they could be scrambling to try to get another guard in there, and it could be really unclear. Yeah. I think what kind of got lost in the shuffle too is Josh Langford's been out since the first month of the season. Former 5-star guy, double-figure scorer multiple years. If he was healthy, I mean, maybe this is a different story for Michigan State. And if he comes back next year, he could be another piece to a potential top 4 team. Yeah.
I mean, if Langford and Winston are there and Xavier Tillman doesn't leave, he said he wasn't, I'm pretty sure that's the best team in the country next year. I mean, I'm pretty confident in that, and we'll touch on our top 25s in a sec. I'm going to do Virginia Auburn in a bit. But I mean, just flat out, like a Cassius Winston, Josh Langford, Aaron Henry, Gabe Brown at the 4, Tom at the 5, and then a bench of like Foster Lawyer, Rocket Watts,
Arns Bingham,
the kid Terry is like a top 75 recruit. I mean, like that's a team, man. That's a really good basketball team with the best player in the country in Cassius Winston.
In terms of Auburn and Virginia, another great game. We had a controversial ending, which real time it was a lot more controversial than on the replay. It was clearly a foul, and then people rewind, and there was the double dribble earlier. But if Auburn doesn't foul Jerome after the ball hits his foot, I mean they probably win. When you foul so late in the shot clock, you risk inadvertently getting a shooting foul when you're trying to give a foul on the floor because there's such limited time where they have to shoot it. Or in this case, you had Jerome kind of trapped. He lost the ball, fumbled it. He's in a disadvantage situation. You kind of let them reset, and it put them in a spot where they had to catch and shoot. And if you're a guy like Bryce Brown, right, over closed out there, like closed out too aggressively to pick up the foul. If he closes out less aggressively though, and guy gets a wide open look at a 3-pointer and that goes in, I mean he's in a lot of trouble. So it's hard to fault him for the over aggressiveness, even though it ultimately ended Auburn's season. It was just a tough spot to be in, and it could have totally been avoided if they hadn't given that foul with about 5 seconds left. That ended up being with 1.5 seconds left when they actually gave it.
Yeah, I believe it was actually, wasn't it Doty who gave the foul?
You're right. Yeah, but it was Doty.
Regardless,
people thought it was Bryce Brown, but sorry, Bryce Brown.
Yeah, I mean Bryce Brown was arguably worse with the choking thing. That was really funny. But yeah, I thought Virginia winning this game saved Tony Bennett from some heat because, I mean, first off, it took him too long to take a timeout during the Auburn run. Second of all, what do you do with 7.5? This is like a minor-ish thing, but with 7.5 seconds to go, when guy hits the 3, how are you not calling a timeout? First of all, check the clock because they lost a second and then they put it back after the foul only because Clehey Clark gave the foul before the ball was inbounded. But you don't even get a chance to set your pressure. Like, what are you doing? Like that's such a typical timeout situation. And then, I mean, it took him too long to get the Kyle guy open 3, or not even open 3, like the deep 3 he hit in the corner, the opposite corner to get it to a 1-point game. I mean, I did not think Tony Bennett handled this game well down the stretch, but they got a good look late. He drew up a really good one late for Guy. And then obviously gets fouled, and the rest is history. But I did not think Tony Bennett managed this game great down the stretch, and it was not something I mentioned at all. But it's just kind of something I was thinking about.
Well, John Wasserman from Bleacher Report tweeted this yesterday. I was about to tweet it when I was scrolling through. He literally said exactly what I was going to say. Is that Virginia lacks the guy who can go and get his own shot. I mean, Jerome can kind of like slowly body himself in there and throw up like a 15-foot floater that goes in, right? But we saw when Auburn's making that furious comeback, it's Jerome standing 30 feet away from the basket, dribbling, pounding it into the ground. Then Clark, then Guy. They had no one that could just take someone off the dribble and get them a shot. These kind of low efficiency, kind of volume shooters. They're much maligned by the efficiency people, but in the right setting and in the right dosage, if they're willing to accept like a bench scorer role, I mean, they're just so useful. I mean, the guy who always comes to mind for me is like a Jamal Crawford type. You just bring them off the bench and they can get you a shot. Something that is very undervalued, especially a team like Virginia. I mean, they have some really good offensive players, but I think with their slow pace and their very half court oriented offense, they're just so used to running sets that when you need something a little quicker or like you need to kind of improvise, they're not as good. And as someone who watched a lot of Providence basketball this year, that Ty Jerome just dribbling it out and then taking a contested 3 after dribbling out the whole shot clock, I've seen that time and time again at the end of games. I mean, it was literally like a deja vu for me. When you don't have someone who can create it doesn't really manufacture itself until the end of the game because you can just run your sets and script everything. But when you need a quick hitter, it really bites you.
Yeah, and I mean, I also think like DeAndre Hunter should be that guy, right? Like, I thought in the Duke game at Cameron, Duke did a really good job to take away a lot of the pin down action, a lot of the blocker mover stuff that Virginia really likes to run. And DeAndre Hunter got buckets for them. And it was often late shot clock, but it was like he went out and he made a play. And I don't think he knows he's a star. I think Jeff Goodman tweeted something to this extent, but it just felt like he needed to be the guy that took over and got him a bucket down the stretch when they needed one, and he just didn't. And Jerome was left to kind of negotiate his way into the lane and throw up a forced floater.
Yeah, I was surprised that Virginia didn't grab a grad transfer in the offseason at the guard or wing spot. I know that they liked Kihei Clark, and then Key got the waiver, which is pretty fortunate. I mean, Key wasn't as good as he should have been this year, based on what he's shown previously. But I mean, last year they had Nigel Johnson, who I think they wanted to be that kind of scoring spark plug off the bench. I wonder if they were so fine with Clark that they didn't go after that. But that was something that this team really could use. Although, I mean, if they win the championship tomorrow, it's kind of like they survived without it, certainly. And then wanted to bring up Giakite too, who is always teased with his potential and his upside. He had a really great tournament so far. He's bringing a lot of energy, blocking shots, even flashing a face-up jumper. So he's someone certainly to watch. I think he's a senior next year, so that could, with Salt gone, he could really emerge, playing a lot more minutes.
Yeah, no, I would completely agree. I thought Diakite was really good. I think Virginia next year, like the one concern is losing Hunter. Like, how do they, even if they bring back Jerome, who I think I'll bet is coming back, losing Hunter is going to be tough in terms of just that third scorer. And they do have some guys in the pipeline, but Virginia's going to develop their guys. It's not going to be bring in a guy who's going to score 15 a game right away. And even Hunter was a redshirt freshman. So we'll see there. But I think Virginia, has a very real chance, and kind of will quickly touch on the championship game. I think Texas Tech's the better team right now, quite frankly, Brad. I don't know what you think about that, but just kind of watching them the last 3 games, I think Texas Tech is a more convincing college basketball team. I think they're as good defensively. They've got more. They look more composed on the offensive end. I think Texas Tech, the defensive battle between Texas Tech and Virginia is going to be really fun. The game planning that Texas Tech is going to have to do on short rest to turn around and be prepared for the elevator screens and the pin downs and all the things that Virginia does to you that are so mentally draining to defend. I think that's going to be really fun to watch. I have been on Virginia's bandwagon all year. I said they win the national championship right after they lost the NBC. I thought they could do it, and they're 1 win away. I have no reason to doubt them, so I'm going to pick Virginia, but I'm not going to be super confident in that pick. What about you?
I'm also picking Virginia here. Virginia's had some serious close calls. They've been fortunate a few times, and Texas Tech has certainly looked better to this point. It really is a toss-up. I mean, both teams have a fair amount of shooting. They both have NBA prospects. They have size. They can go big. Virginia hasn't done it as much recently, I don't think, but they have played Giakite with either Huff or Salt. Huff's been buried recently, but they can go big and match Texas Tech's physicality. They can also go small with Hunter at the 4. He can match up pretty well with Culver. I mean, maybe they won't have the same advantages that they can usually enjoy by playing a guy like Culver at the 4 with Hunter defending him. And then they have two really good shot makers, really good decision makers as well. So it's really a toss up. I'm gonna go with Virginia too. So.
Yeah, it's gonna be really fun. I'm excited about it tomorrow night, and it all comes down to this. And I think I'm very confident it will be a competitive game. That's the one thing you always want is a very close, competitive basketball game, and I'm very confident we get that. So should be an exciting game for those who those who choose to watch this this boring college basketball game we're gonna have. I'm very excited about it. I think it'll be just a really good test of Chris Beard, of Tony Bennett, and neither team has ever won a national championship. I think that's really cool that they'll crown one for the first time. So definitely looking forward to that. But Brad, we wanted to do top 25s in this pod. This is your thing. I'll kind of let you take it away because you've gotten the most feedback so far because you've tweeted yours out. Looks like you've got plenty of replies and some complaints. Before we kind of go through these, what is the ranking you have right now that the most people have given you shit for?
Well, so the Auburn fans are very upset with me not having them in. And so the reason why I don't is I think Jared Harper's leaving. I know it was heavily suggested he was going to leave after last year. He comes back. He's now on draft boards. I checked ESPN's earlier. He's in like the 50s, which is certainly a range where he could go. He's probably not going to improve his stock much. That's like the style of player he is. Those guys, once they've hit a certain level of production, that's usually where they peak. I think Harper's gone, and they have a bunch of other guys too who could also leave. I mean, between Purifoy, Wiley, Okiki's a real NBA prospect, like the only one of those guys who will probably get drafted. But I would not be surprised to see any of them leave. So I think a lineup of McCormick, Dowdy, we'll say Isaac Okoro, Purifoy, and McLemore. I mean, that's a fringe top 25 team at best. It seems like a lot of the Auburn fans, they think that Jared Harper is staying. But I think the reason why they're so mad is, oh, look, we're in the Final Four. Right? I mean, no one was higher preseason on Auburn than I was. I had them 5th. I'm 99% sure I had them the highest of literally anyone. And this smells, I mean, not to the same degree, but a lot like Loyola from last year. I mean, you have to remember, Auburn was a 5 seed, all right? They were like an 8 seed until like the last few weeks of the season, but they ended up as a 5 seed. And they were very hot and cold, and they were built. What made Auburn so special was they had 2 great guards in Brown and Harper who could knock down shots, who were explosive. They could play in transition. They were fast. If both of those are gone, Auburn loses its competitive advantage. And as we saw with Loyola, the team makes the Final Four, but they were an 11 seed, and I think people put too much stock in the single elimination tournament, and it's not like they made the Final Four and they bring everybody back. They're losing what made them so good, like how Loyola had Ingram and Jackson. They could go small. That different look made them so good. I think that's a very apt comparison with Auburn. Yeah,
I'll buy that. I'll totally buy that. I think they should be ranked because I do think he's back. I do think Harper, I should say, is back. He was kind of vague, but I do think Jared Harper's going to come back. So I do have them ranked. But yeah, I mean, if he's not back, then I don't understand the buzz, especially if Okiki goes. I don't think there's really any justification if Okiki goes. I know a lot of people are big Okoro guys, the freshman, very athletic, coming from McEachern, which is one of the best high school programs in the country. I know they have like several D1 commits, Jared Jones, the Northwestern, Sharif Cooper, who's a 2025 star, a few other guys. They're loaded. But I think you're right in not ranking them if you're going to bet on that. That's the thing that's so inexact about this is like we both came in and made top 25s, but like we don't literally have any idea who like we literally have no idea who's going to be on the rosters. We came in with different estimates of who's going to be on who. So very tough there. Brad, why don't you start? Let's go like 1 through 5 for you.
Well, do we still want to bring up some kind of points of contention too?
I mean, we can just kind of go through the points of contention as we go if you want, just because we could talk all day. I mean, we've already been on this pod for like 35, 40 minutes.
Okay, so I think that there's a clear top 4 for me, and I wouldn't mind if you had any of these 4 teams in any order, and that's Virginia, assuming that Jerome is back, Kentucky, assuming that, Harrell's probably gone, but if Hagens and Montgomery and those kind of fringe guys, maybe they could leave. I mean, for Kentucky to be in the top 5, they need to return. Then Michigan State, obviously dependent on Cash Winston, and then Michigan dependent on Poole and Brazdeikis. I think that's your clear top 4. Now, I got some pushback. It's actually pretty funny. I had one guy say, this list is the worst list I've ever seen. And another guy replied, yeah, Duke is too low. And he said, no, Duke's fine. Kentucky's too high. So everyone's like, yeah, this is crazy. And then when they say what they think is crazy, the other person is always like, no, that's fine. This other thing is crazy. So no one's on the same page, which actually makes me feel a lot better about my rankings.
Yes. Everyone hating you is the right way for rankings to look. If you have several fan bases that like you way too much, then you're in trouble. You want everyone to hate you. But yeah, I think I'd buy that top 4. I'm going to go in a different order. I have Michigan State number 1, assuming Cassius is back, assuming Langford's back. I have Virginia number 2, assuming Ty Jerome is back. I have Kentucky number 3. I don't even need Tyler Harrow to be there. I'm fine with him gone. I mean, they need Hagens because they need a point guard. But I think the Sestina pickup from Bucknell helps them. It's kind of like a 6'8" guy who can step out and shoot a 3. He'll average like 5.5 points a game, and that's fine. Like, I don't think people realize that there's valid like landing a guy who can play 12 to 18 minutes a game, hit a 3, rebound, defend in space a little bit, kind of give you different looks to play small if you want, is like a highly valuable player. That's not an insignificant piece, and that's not a piece that they can just pick up no matter what. For all of EJ Montgomerys and Nick Richards and like other high level recruits who are non-pan outs, like give me a Nate Sestina who's going to play minutes, and then Michigan is my number 4 right now, kind of barring any weird departures. I don't think Brazdeikis is going.
Yeah. So in terms of Kentucky. Well, first, in terms of Sestina, right? He was playing behind an elite mid-major front court last year, and Zach Thomas and Nana Folland. He, was playing his 15 minutes a game. They leave. He explodes out of nowhere. Has a huge season and is now parlayed that to a spot on Kentucky, which is really impressive. He'll play some with Montgomery, probably less so with Richards, but they could also do that as well. But I think if Kentucky, if it's Hagens, Maxey, Hero, Montgomery, and Richards, I think that's without a doubt the number 1 team. If Harrell leaves and you slide in either Khalil Whitney or quickly in a smaller lineup, I think that they still have a claim for number 1. But I think I would go with Virginia with Jerome over them instead.
Yeah, and I'm also pretty I was debating Virginia over Michigan State as number 1. I just don't think without Hunter you can really justify Michigan State with Cassius. But yeah, I mean, I think Kentucky, I also like recruiting classes that have a lot of wings. I think like guys like Whitney, Brooks, and then Tyrese Maxey is more of like a 2. Like he's not really a point guard from my understanding of him as a recruit. Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong there. But like just adding like 3 guys who can probably score, probably defend, the downside is very low. Whereas with bigs and point guards, the variance is very high. Like if you're banking on Emmanuel Quickly to be the Kentucky starting point guard this year, they've been in a world of hurt. And like Hagens wasn't great, but he was better. I
mean, guys who stink as freshman point guards. I mean, once the light bulb turns on, a lot of them in their sophomore seasons, I mean, they're a completely different player. I mean, we talked about Davide Moretti earlier. Ty Jerome stunk as a freshman for Providence. I mean, Chris Dunn, he didn't even play point guard as a freshman, and now he's an NBA starting point guard. Same with Kyron Cartwright. He stunk as a freshman. I mean, you can just go down these lists of David Crisp stunk for like 2 years. Mississippi State, Lamar Peters, he stunk before he was good. Florida State with Trent Forrest. I mean, the list is endless. And so I would not be that down on Kentucky, even if say Hagen's left and quickly had to be the point guard, because with point guards, as long as they get some minutes as freshmen to kind of cut their teeth, I mean, the light bulb can really turn on at any point in their sophomore season, especially with these highly ranked recruits.
That's all fair. No, I think you misunderstood me. I think I was saying like a top 20 kid in like the Keon Brooks range of recruit.
Oh, yeah.
Bring him in, and that's your like point guard solution for the year. Like if Kentucky all they had was Emmanuel Quickly this year, they would have been in trouble because he was not ready to run the show.
Yes.
That was my point. So
absolutely,
but totally agree. Like point guards, like come on, you're all right. So top 4, we're both confident in that 4. Where are you going for that next tier?
Now this is where it completely goes off the rails. Completely. Now, if Duke gets Trey Jones back, and if they get Matt Hurt, or like another big time grad transfer, I think Duke's number 5. For my rankings, I assumed that they have Trey Jones back, but no additional players. So I have 5 as Mississippi State, assuming that all their fringe guys come back: Perry, Weatherspoon, Peters. Arizona at 6, which a lot of people not really argued with, but were kind of surprised about. I mean, that team's loaded. I mean, they have talented freshmen mixed with a lot of returning players. That's going to be a really interesting team. High-level point guard in Nico Mannion, a couple NBA caliber wings with Josh Green, Brandon Randolph, a grad transfer power forward, the first grad transfer off the board, and Stone Gettings from Cornell, and then Chase Jeter as a veteran big man. That's a really strong lineup with Brandon Williams off the bench. I put Florida State at 7. I really like their big 3 of Forrest, MJ Walker, and Kabengele for next year. And I know a lot of people really like Devin Vassell as a long-term play. And I love guys like Raekwon Gray, like a big physical 4-man who can handle the ball. And they have some interesting depth pieces as well. Then Duke, I have a number 8 right there. And I think that's a tier for me.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll just kind of comment quickly on those teams before I kind of give mine. I think Duke will be fine, mostly because I'm banking on them getting hurt. Like that just feels I'm pretty confident in that at this point. So they're my number 5, actually. I think with Trey, with Wendell Moore, I mean, Trey is a huge swing player because like the context for Trey this year was as good a context as you could have put him in, correct? With the exception of like slightly more space. Like not expected to score, didn't matter that he couldn't shoot, defend, scrap, pass. Perfect. Next year, I mean, Zion was transcendent. I don't think Vernon Carey is.
No, I mean, they had Zion, R.J. Barrett, and even though Cam Reddish was much maligned, I mean, he from a macro perspective, he was a great freshman, right? And next year you go from like the 1, 2, and 4 ranked recruits. So you have Carey, who's either 1 or 2, and then you go Wendell Moore, who's like 15th, and then Boogie Ellis is like 30th. That's why adding Matthew Hurt, who's really good. He's a stretch 4 who's not afraid to mix it up and rebound, and he's a crafty player, great shooter, zone buster in the middle of that zone. He would make a world of a difference. Him at the 4 and Carey at the 5. The way it's currently constructed, your lineup's probably Trey Jones, Alex O'Connell, who in and out of the rotation this year, Wendell Moore, and then I guess Carey and DeLaurier. It's just not a great fit there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think. I'll buy that, but I'll take Duke at 5, kind of pending things. Arizona, I'm hesitant just because I don't know, what like we still don't totally know what's going to happen with Sean Miller in that class, but I think tentatively penciling them in at 5 or 6 makes a world of sense. I have them at 6, so we agree there once again. Florida State, I'm pretty lower on, but I was betting on Kabengele leaving. Actually, I feel like there's like growing draft buzz about him. Just had a really good year. Leonard Hamilton still refuses him to play big minutes. I feel like he's one that I'm kind of betting on to leave, but I think that 7 to 12 range is absolutely right if he's like there. And then Mississippi State, I don't know. I think so. last year, one of the things I kind of said to you was like Auburn, like how much, because you bet so high on Auburn. And my thing was like was Auburn the best they could be this year? Like, could they get any better than like 4-seed material? I'm not totally sure that Mississippi State has like the pieces to make a big jump other than maybe Reggie Perry. I think Perry could get better and get them into this range. I don't see them at 5, but I could see them at 8. I have them. Well, let me check here. Make sure I'm not doing anything crazy. I think I had them at 12. I've lost my top 25, so it's taking me a second to pull this thing back up. But yeah, I had them at 12.
Yeah, and I'm not super high. Well, I mean, I have them at 5th, but I don't see them as like a normal 5th best team in the country. Like, I mentioned this went off the rails. I mean, this was kind of the lesser of two evils. You go Arizona, which didn't make the tournament and is totally revamped their roster. Florida State, super young outside of their big 3. A lot of kind of moving pieces. They can still use another ball handler, and then Duke obviously needs at least one more piece. So it just felt like they were the best of the alternatives.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. So yeah, I had them at 12. I had Duke 5, Arizona 6, and then at 7 I had. Let's see here. Just want to make sure I'm not, because I literally cannot find my top 25 right now. It's kind of a concern. Oh, I know. I had Ohio State at 7, and like this is gonna sound like absurd, but I'm getting like LSU-esque vibes, where like they've got a really good coach, they've got a really good class, they've got guys coming back who I really like. I think they'll be an interesting destination for grad transfers. I think they're recruiting like Justin Pierce from William and Mary. So this is like an aggressive ranking of Ohio State. I don't even know if you have them ranked. I don't remember if you do. But if you have Caleb Wesson back, who's like a bruiser of a center, one of the better big players in the Big Ten, you've got a good point guard in DJ Carton. You've got Luther Muhammad and Dwayne Washington, two other good guards who could score. The wings, I don't know. I think it's intriguing. I think it's probably way high, but I don't know. It's just like it's kind of a weird gamble.
Yeah, I had Ohio State number 20.
Okay.
Yeah, I like a lot of their pieces, and I like how a lot of them fit. I'm a big Andre Wesson guy. Obviously, Caleb Wesson took a big step forward, and I always like C.J. Walker at Florida State. So I love him and love Carton. So maybe they can use a couple, like a dual point guard look. I love Luther Muhammad. I think Musa Jallo could take a step. He was a young sophomore, and then a couple top 50 recruits on the wing with Gaffney and then Little at the 4. They have a lot of nice pieces. 20, I think, is conservative. I think it's probably a little on the low side for Ohio State.
7's probably too high, but
yeah,
it's like
I don't know. I mean, they have some good pieces.
And I love Chris Holtman. Like, I'm a big Chris Holtman guy. I overbet on them this year. I thought I was a genius early. Like the first month of the year when they were rolling, I was like, dang, Chris Holtman's a beast. I'm making out like gangbusters on this Ohio State pick, and then kind of fell off. But anyway, I do like Ohio State. I have Ohio State 7 and Auburn 8. I'm actually gonna flip those. I'm gonna say Auburn 7, Ohio State 8.
Now this and for me,
Harper back. Okay.
This next year, this is where I was really like where are we going here with this? I have Iowa at 9, Oregon at 10, Cincinnati at 11, Maryland at 12, and that is assuming that everyone returns who should for Iowa. Oregon returns Pritchard, King, and Bull, and Wooten, not Bull. He's long gone. Cincy at 11, obviously they need Cumberland back, but everyone's back except for Jennifer and Broome. I think that's a team that's being really underrated right now. I saw a lot of Cincinnati fans pushing back at me for such an aggressive ranking, and they seem to a little down on the team at the moment. But if they get upgraded point guard, I think Cincinnati could even climb to that 5 spot if they can get like a good point guard in there. In the Maryland at 12, it would be Smith and Cowan back, no Fernando.
Okay. Yeah, so I had Louisville at 9.
Oh.
Are you with Wara back?
Whoa.
And an elite class, and Chris Mack is their coach?
I don't have them even close to being ranked.
Am I crazy here?
I got some pushback on that as well. My reasoning for no Louisville was right when so they were a 7 seed, but they were a 7 seed because of what they did early in the season, right? When Kristen Cunningham was playing out of his mind, he's gone. Right? They limped to the finish. They weren't even close to a top 25 team by the end of the season, despite spending most of the season in the top 25. Their point guard situation for next year is either Darius Perry, who has not been good thus far and is probably more of an off guard, and then David Johnson, who's a borderline top 100 recruit. And we've seen time and time again that's not sufficient for a point guard play. I mean, I had these same arguments with people last year about Jordan McCabe in West Virginia, where they're like, you're underrating McCabe. West Virginia is going to be really good. And I said, it's very, very difficult to find guys who are ranked in that 75 to 125 range who are starting point guards as freshmen on a good team. You can have guys like Carson Edwards who played off the ball, but besides like Trey Burke, and there was one other guy too that I found, every other one was either a good point guard on a bad team or a guy like McKay or a guy who had to wait his turn on a good team. So that's the main reason why I'm so down on Louisville, the guard play. And this class, it is very good, but it's not 5-star talent. It's a lot of Iggy Hahn and Williamson are close, but the rest of the guys, I mean, these are normal 4 stars that every team in the top 25 is going to have a couple of those guys.
Yeah, I guess so. Here's my argument for Louisville is the number one. You have a guy who I think will be an All-American, Jordan Nwora, right? Like really good.
Yep.
Averaged 17 and 8 this year, like efficient. Could score 3 levels. Really, really, really good basketball player. Like best player on a Final Four team. Good in my mind. Do you think that's crazy?
I think it's a little high, but it's not crazy.
Okay. I think Enoch was good this year. Dwayne Sutton, another good good solid player. He averaged 10 and 7. I think that's pretty much a ceiling. I don't think he's getting a lot better than that. The big thing is just point guard, right? It's a bet on David Johnson or grad transfers to hold down point guard. But I mean, Samuel Williamson is getting a ton of buzz. All the recruiting people are starting to rise on Samuel Williamson. I mean, Iggy Hahn will be useful. Nickelberry is pretty good. Jalen Withers is, I think, a long-term guy, but I think that's a really good core. And I'm a really big Chris Mack believer. And it's not like a blind thing. Like, they have talent. I think Chris Mack is really good at putting guys in positions to succeed right away.
So this is more of a broader point too, because spoiler alert, I don't have Gonzaga ranked. And this is the same thing, regarding point guards. Is I'm going to go through the top 25 on KenPom this year and give you the worst point guards from top 25 teams. I mean, I guess you can include Kihei Clark, right? But they had other main creators. Nogel Eastern, but he's someone who got minutes as a freshman. He was very useful as a defender. Let's see. I think Demetric Trice is better, or like he's good enough not to be considered on the worst point guard list. Storm Murphy is probably one of the worst point guards for a top 25 team. And
right.
Devontae Jordan. And, I mean, that's it. I mean, like, your other guys, I mean, Matt Coleman, Anthony Cowan, Kristen Cunningham, Weatherspoon and Peters, Stokes, Tremont Waters, Davon Dotson. I mean, these Justin Robinson, Trent Forrest, Galen Robinson, Jared Harper. I mean, you just can't have an inexperienced point guard, ranked where these guys are ranked, and still have a top 25 team in most instances.
Alternate point. What was Christian Cunningham before this year?
I mean, he was a veteran who was one of the nation's leader in assists.
Oh my God, he was on a terrible Samford team as like a second as an in and out ball handler. That like his best year of his career, he averaged 6 assists a game on a Samford team that went 20-16 and finished under 500 in the SoCon. I don't think you can say that like Christian Cunningham is a high level point guard that like is in like his level of production is incapable of being replaced given a Chris Mack system. Because Chris Mack has had really good point guards throughout his entire coaching career. Like at Xavier, good point guards, almost constant.
Right, but if a Louisville or Gonzaga, if they get a good grad chance for point guard, I'll move them up. I'll move them in.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Christian Cunningham as a 5th-year senior who had he was productive, albeit not on a good team. That's light years ahead of Perry and Johnson, and then for Gonzaga, Joel Ayayi and Brock Raven.
Yeah, I'll buy that. I'm gonna buy Louisville stock right now, but I understand your point regarding point guards.
Yeah, so kind of back to this range for me. Coming into this, I did not expect to be ranking Iowa and Oregon so high, right? I could see Cincinnati, I could see Maryland, but when it comes down to it, team like Oregon wasn't even at large team, but if Luke King returns, they'll have a senior point guard and a Peyton Pritchard, guy that a lot of people like, and a CJ Walker, and then a rim protector in Kenny Wooten, with all these kind of like your Victor Baileys and your Will Richardsons who got some run this year. I think that this could be a sneaky underrated top 10 team that not a lot of people are kind of paying attention to.
I'll buy that. I have Oregon at 11. So, I mean, similar range. I think as long as Pritchard's back, they should be fine. They have a good class. They got better as the season went on. Luke King could be a really good player next year. I would be surprised if Luke King isn't a star. And I think they'll have a chance to kind of Washington-esque make a jump into like the top 25 for most of the season, even if they're not as good, because the league is still not good. I don't think. I mean, Arizona could be better. UCLA, well, they should be. They'll definitely be better unless Sean Miller blows up. UCLA may not be better. Washington, I don't know if they'll be. I don't know where do you have Washington ranked?
No.
Yeah, without Noel, I mean, I think a lot of the luster's off there.
Yeah, I mean, they have a great big man, but I know we've talked about this a lot, that these kind of freshman one-and-done bigs, they don't impact winning too much. And then Quade Green probably won't be eligible until the second semester, until the end of the first semester. Although Washington, I think, is on quarter, so maybe he's eligible a little earlier. But they have an unproven point guard, right? Who was so turnover prone. He was essentially removed from the rotation at Kentucky. Naz Carter's a nice piece. Jamal Bay's a nice piece, but they're that's not enough for top 25 core. I do think that the Pac-12 is going to be a lot better next year with Arizona and in Oregon. I both them in the top 10. I have Washington and Arizona State, kind of outside of the top 25, but still in contention. I think Colorado, could also make an NCAA tournament. So I mean, that's 5 teams right there, and then UCLA, USC, Stanford. They have talent, and then that kind of bottom 4, or at least Oregon State and Utah, they look okay-ish, like fringe NIT-ish. And then Cal and Washington State are going to be really bad again, obviously.
Yeah, no, I'll buy it. I'll buy that. So yeah, let's kind of work through these rankings just because we've already been on this pod for an hour, and the people don't want to listen to a 2-hour pod. I don't think. Correct us if you're wrong in the comments, as always. But yeah, I'll kind of run through up to 14 for me, just because that was kind of a closing tier for me. So I had Louisville at 9. I did Maryland at 10, Oregon at 11, Texas Tech at 12. Kind of betting on the defense, betting on the recruits, betting on Moretti. Seton Hall at 13. Florida State at 14. Yeah, and then you can go.
So my next tier here, 5 teams. This I think is a clear step down, but I think all these teams should be in the mix here. I'm pretty confident on these. Creighton at 13, Seton Hall at 14, Kansas at 15, Florida at 16, and Marquette at 17. So that's Kansas losing as Azubuike and Lawson, and obviously Silvio De Souza, but returning Grimes and Dodson and Egbaji. Florida, they have everyone that they should. Marquette losing Marcus Howard, but everyone else is back. Kobe McEwen's going to be a big piece for them. And then Seton Hall, Miles Powell back. Creighton with Crumple back.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have Marquette ranked because I have Marcus Howard gone. I don't know that you can rank them if he's gone. I don't know. It's to me like he was so valuable, and this team wasn't that good this year, right? Like Wojo, I'm still like the book's out to me still on Wojo. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I saw someone say today that the AAC has better coaches than the Big East, and I think that's true, right? But the Big East, it's a lot of young, kind of inexperienced guys. They have a lot of very good coaches. Like Willard is very good, Cooley's very good, right? But they're not great. But one tournament run, changes everything. Like before last year's Elite Eight, Chris Beard was liked, right? But he wasn't seen as like an elite coach. Before Jay Wright's national championship, he was like a choker, right? So it all changes so quickly. So if Marquette makes a Sweet 16 next year, or has more extended success, the narratives change so quickly.
Agree. I mean, but the thing for me is like, we know Wojo can recruit, but like, what did he like? Did he maximize this team?
I think he may have maximized them. The thing was, Chartouni wasn't anywhere near as good as I and many people thought he would be. He quite frankly stunk. Brennan Bailey didn't quite live up to expectations as a freshman, and then Morrow wasn't quite as good as people thought either. So he had, I think, a little less talent than we thought coming in. But it's a weird team. I mean, they have Marcus Howard, who's not a point guard. He's a scorer. And then they had Sakari Annam. It's kind of an awkward fit next to Howard. And then they had 2 power forwards, right, with the Hausers playing. Sam playing on the wing. They're kind of slow. They like to back them in the post, and then they had like a rim protector in John. It was a weirdly constructed team. I think that they may have gotten the most out of them.
Yeah, I guess I can get the frustrating. It's always hard to evaluate because, so for me in particular, I think Marquette at one point was the best team Marquette could have been, but Marquette wasn't the best team it could have been in March. Right? Like Marquette played Buffalo and just blew the doors off Buffalo and scored like 120 points and looked like an absolute wrecking ball. I was like, ooh, that team is good. And then when they started to hot in Big East play and Marcus Howard was going berserk, I was like, dang, this team is good. And then like they lose 5 or 6 to end the year going into the NCAA tournament. They had the doors blown off them by Murray State. Like, I don't know. I think so much of the view of did you get the most out of a team is did you get the most out of them when they were supposed to, like when they're supposed to peak, and they certainly peaked at the wrong time.
Yeah, I would agree. But also, I mean, Kobe McEwen. I mean, it would be hard to find a better point guard replacement. I mean, he was one of the best transfers on the market. So to get a veteran there to replace Howard, I mean, that's probably as good as it gets. I mean, I think that you could still rank Marquette without Howard. I think you probably still should. Returning like their top or like six of their top seven, and then adding McEwen. I think that's certainly enough to be ranked, even though they weren't playing their best ball down the stretch.
I will say, kind of on McEwen, is a guy whose assist to turnover ratio was 3.2 assists to 3 turnovers. Really, like the point guard you want to trust in. / like, is it that much of a criticism of Tim Duria, or like Utah State went 17-17 last year with Sam Merrill, who was an All-American this year, Kobe McEwen, plus like a legit talented player in Dwayne Brown, who was who kind of took a step back this year, but was very solid for them. Plus D'Angelo Isby, who's like who I know like a lot of people saw as like a highly talented JUCO wing who could really score the basketball. And they went 17-17, and Craig Smith lost 2 of those guys and got less out of Dwayne Brown, and then landed Keita, and it's all of a sudden a top 25 team. Like, is it just coaching, or like can a backcourt run by Kobe McEwen not translate to winning? Because he's kind of that big point guard who's more of a scorer. I don't know. I think part of me says that he's not a guy you want. The ball being in his hands does not indicate a great team to me. I will say that.
I mean, I think you could have made a lot of the same arguments about Marcus Howard. I mean, when he wasn't exploding for like 30, 40 points, he was taking contested shots. When teams could put length on him, he really struggled, and he doesn't get teammates involved. So, you mentioned McEwen's assist to turnover ratio. I would think Howard's is around the same range.
Yeah, that's fair. Let me just pull it up real quick for reference. I feel like that's a pretty important stat. So Marcus Howard in this season was 3.9 assists, 3.9 turnovers, and last year was 2.9 assists, or 2.8 assists to 2.5 turnovers. That said, like Marcus Howard was one of the best scorers in college basketball, and I don't think Kobe McEwen will be.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so that's our opinion on Marquette. Florida and Kansas, I think, are in the same boat. They're going to be young, but they have a lot of guys who played minutes and kind of cut their teeth as freshmen. They were highly ranked recruits, and now they're returning. Florida's adding a one and done type talent in Scotty Lewis, who I think should be a nice fit next to Nembhard and Locke as their perimeter trio. I mean, Florida still has moves to make. They need to add, another kind of combo forward or a true power forward, preferably one who can stretch the floor, and another kind of guard or wing there. And if and when they make those moves, they could maybe even move up a little bit. I know Nembhard was kind of disappointing based on expectations, but as a sophomore, I think he could be really good. Kansas, I think Grimes, he's never going to be a great NBA prospect, but I think he'll become a really good college player. So you have him and Dodson, and then Agbaji, showed some flashes. This is a team that's also not done. I mean, they need to add people. I would be shocked if they didn't add at least one grad transfer, and they're still in the mix for Precious Achiuwa and Matt Hurt too.
Yeah, so I had Kansas and Florida at 19 and 20 respectively. Just kind of quick notes on both of those teams that I had. Kansas, I had Quentin Grimes going to the draft. I did not have him staying. I don't know how realistic what that is, but I think I'm kind of in love with Florida's backcourt, like a Nembhard, Johnson, Locke, Trey Mann group is like really intriguing to me. Scotty Lewis as well. I mean, Scotty Lewis is, I guess, like a 3, but in that they can play a lot of really fun like 3-guard looks with like Nembhard, Locke, Lewis, or Nembhard, Mann. Nembhard, you could go like Nembhard and Mann, like dual like ball handlers. and that's very exciting. Potentially, agree they're thin up front. I didn't really get the Keystone transfer.
Keontae Johnson, is their power forward of the future. I mean,
he's small, but
he is. But I mean, he's super athletic, and I think Stone just kind of lost a spot. He had a down year. He was supposed to be a lot better this year. So he's going to find a better spot. Off the top of my head, a team that can use a power forward.
Northwest recruiting any
Kansas
players who are available. So
yeah, NC State could.
They're recruiting Pat Andry from Lehigh, the stretch four. But yeah, no,
so
I think
Kansas State.
Yeah, they could use him, but I think he's a Dean Wade replacement. Even though he's not as mobile. But I mean, at Nembhard, you could play a four mobile guys look, and Nembhard, Locke as a shooter, Lewis, Johnson, and probably Bassett.
I mean, they have Bassett. They have a skilled big in Isaiah Stokes. They have a top 50 recruit in Omar Payne. So they have a lot of different looks that they have.
Yeah,
available.
I mean, they're 1 5-man that I trust away from being really good.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I am at 20. With Kansas, yeah, I mean, I'm very torn as to what to do with them. I mean, losing Lawson was, I would say, expected. There was only so much more he could do in college. What more was he going to do at Kansas that he could prove as an NBA player other than add a 3, but a more consistent 3, I should say. Speaking of which, it'll be interesting to see where KJ winds up as a grad kid. Yeah, I mean, if Kansas brings back Udoka, which I would still expect, even if they lose Grimes, I think they'll be okay. I just think the one kind of concerning thing is their recruiting class right now is not good. I'm sure they're gonna I know they're in on Harlan Beverly. They could get Hurt. They're still in there. I believe they still have a shot at Achua, right?
Yep.
So I mean, they'll add some guys, but there's no one coming in that is right now that is guaranteed to make an impact as a freshman.
Yep, agree 100%.
So I mean, Garrett, Agbaji becoming a stud could totally happen. But we'll see there. But yeah, I mean, Dotson, what's your projected starting lineup right now?
Dodson, Grimes, Garrett, Agbaji, and McCormick. So that would mean Lightfoot off the bench.
Joker gone?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was surprised he didn't leave after last season.
That's fair.
So then
I don't know what he is as a prospect, but go get your money, I guess. But.
Yeah. So then Lightfoot, Braun, and McBride. And Braun and McBride are top 150.
I'm not even totally sure you can justify ranking this team if Udoka's not here.
It feels a lot to me like Louisville from a couple years ago, where they had Donovan Mitchell, they had Raymond Spalding, and Quinn Snyder, but they had one other big Deng Adele. And Mitchell, Adele, and Spalding were all okay as freshmen, and a lot of people had Louisville very high, saying that they were all going to break out. The analytics said that they were going to break out. I had a more measured approach, and then it turned out that Donovan Mitchell exploded and Adele became really good. I think that that could be a similar thing here, where you have Dodson, Grimes, McCormick, and Agbaji all going to be sophomores, all played a lot as freshmen, especially down the stretch. And I think that's that could pay huge dividends.
Yeah, no, I totally buy that. I think Agbaji is going to be really, really good. He's going to be fun to watch. I'll run through my 15 to 20 because I already said 19 to 20. So 15 for me is Purdue. Without Carson, he's announced today he was pretty much all but gone. To me, I don't have a huge, I don't have hugely strong opinions about them either way. I think losing Ryan Klein also hurts, but I think guys like Aaron Wheeler, I think he's going to get a lot better. Travion Williams is going to be really, really good. For me, it's just about a guy who's going to handle the ball. I think Eastern's really good. Who's going to handle the ball and shoot without Klein. But I think that's where I can kind of put a little trust in Matt Painter. I think they'll be somewhat active in the markets, and I also think Eric Hunter could take a next step forward, even though he struggled this year.
So I don't have Purdue ranked. I don't think if I had to make a projected tournament, I don't think I'd have them in right now. The team was built so well around Edwards because Edwards was someone who could create offense. Without him, and then without their second best option in Klein, I mean, Stefanovic could take the Klein role. He won't be as good as Klein next year, but they have really no one who can be that go-to scorer. Like their next best players, guys like Eastern, Harms. They're not guys who you can give the ball to and have them create a shot. It feels like this team is just missing that star piece, almost like Iowa after they lost Peter Jock. But I think a lot of people thought that they could still push for a tournament bid, and then the bottom just fell out because they were missing that go-to piece. That's what Purdue feels a lot for me. I mean, I guess Hunter is going to be the guy to start at the 2 next to Eastern and be that scorer, but I mean that's a big jump.
That's fair. That's a fair point. Purdue 15, Houston at 16. I'm just kind of generally betting this year on defenses. Like I think like scheme defense will keep you relevant, and Houston plays such good defense scheme wise that you'll stay relevant. And they have Giroux back, who I think is really good. They've got some decent recruits. I think they'll be fine. 16 for Houston sounds about right for me. Gonzaga at 17. Point guard is concerning, without a doubt. Dayton Ingram, I don't love the fit. I know they're in on him. But Zags do such a good job with transfers that I think that helps. And then I have Villanova at 18. Curious to your thoughts on Nova for next year, Brad, just quickly, because we haven't touched on them. And then Kansas and Florida at 19 and 20.
So I do not have Villanova ranked. I actually have them right now 7th in the Big East. Oof. I think we saw early in the season what happened when Colin Gillespie was the primary creator, and it was not good. He's better, next to a guy like Phil Booth, who can take the reins and be the primary shot creator. I mean, Gillespie's really their only ball handler for next year. I mean, they have Justin Moore, who's a freshman combo guard, but there's going to be so much pressure on Brian Antoine to create shots as a freshman, because you look at his supporting cast. Sadiq Bey is a great support piece. Jermaine Samuel is a great support piece. But these guys don't really create shots. Same with Jeremiah Robinson Earl. I mean, he's a great prospect. He's this kind of new age mobile big man who can step out and shoot. Great defender. But I'm just worried about how this team scores. It seems like it's going to fall a lot on Gillespie and Antoine, which I'm not sure is a great recipe for success. That being said, I mean, if they can keep this whole roster, because they don't have any seniors, back for another year, they could go from being like a 9 or a 10 seed this year to being like an elite team next year if they can kind of figure out and kind of develop some of these guys more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm big on Robinson Earl, big on Antoine, big on Bay. He was really impressive at the end of the year. I think your concerns about a shot creator is valid. I think Antoine can be that guy to a certain extent. And I think Gillespie is a little over maligned, kind of from a perspective of like, I don't think their struggles when they were bad or less good, it wasn't that they were like a horrible offense. It was their offense didn't have an identity. And I guess their identity became Phil Booth kind of creating shots in pick and roll with Pascal. But I don't think Colin Gillespie can't run that offense. So I'll be a little higher on them. But yeah, I mean, that's fair. It is definitely a belief in Colin Gillespie. So yeah, Villanova at 18, Kansas at 19, Florida at 20. And why don't I just kind of round out my 25 here with Iowa at 21, VCU at 22, Cincinnati at 23. I have St. Mary's at 24. I think they're an interesting team that not a lot of people are talking about ranking for next year that I think probably should be ranked. And at 25, kind of gone back and forth on this one. I wrote down multiple names here. I think I'm just going to put Carolina in because I know you didn't. Because, I don't know, it's hard for me to buy a Roy Williams team not being a top 25 level team. I think the pieces are still there's still some fine pieces there. They have a really good recruiting class brewing that's already very good. I mean, it's very unlikely that North Carolina, and I think you would agree on this. Like, it's very unlikely that at the start of the season next year, you're not ranking North Carolina. Is that fair?
Well, yeah. Once they get Cole Anthony, they're in. That was the first line of my tweet today. It's I can't rank North Carolina with a Seventh Woods, Andrew Platek, Leaky Black, Brandon Robinson, Garrison Brooks team. You can't rank that team. But when you say, even just adding Cole Anthony, I mean they're immediately in the top 25, and then when they add a power forward, whether it be Rajon Tucker, Justin Pierce, Precious Achua, then we're talking about even higher. But it reminded me of last year. I had Indiana fans angry at me for not ranking Indiana. I had Vanderbilt fans angry at me for not ranking Vanderbilt, both with the same reason. We have Romeo Langford. How can we not be ranked? And Romeo Langford hadn't committed to either of them yet. And that's why, with the Cole Anthony thing, I had UNC at 15, and then I said, I can't assume that they get Cole Anthony right now, right? Because that's what was driving me crazy last year with those fans. So I'm going to put them on the outside, but once they upgrade the point guard and the power forward, they're in, and my number 25 NC State is out.
Okay. And I do think, just kind of on a quick note, that this team could look somewhat similar to the Carolina team that won the title with like all the bigs, especially with, I mean, obviously Cole Anthony is not Marcus Page at point guard, like very different in terms of experience level, but in terms of like the three big guys, like Armando Bacote, I'm pretty sure mispronounced his name, whatever. Garrison Brooks, and then like Manley, like that is a monster of a three-headed trio.
Yeah, I think that there's some overlap with Manley and Baycott, so I still think Manley's probably going to transfer. But yeah, I wouldn't with the way the roster is currently constructed. I would not be surprised to see Brooks and Manley start together at the 4 and the 5 or something like that. But then in terms of your point on St. Mary's, I mean, I was so close to ranking them. Well, actually, let me go through the rest of mine first. So I had kind of a mini tier from 18 to 20 with Utah State, VCU, and Ohio State. I still think Utah State could use a grad transfer. Just one additional piece there to bolster their talent level. VCU bringing everybody back. Ohio State we touched on earlier, and then I have another tier from 21 to 24, being Texas Tech, Baylor, Xavier, and Houston. There are things to like about all these teams. We can go through them in a little bit. I just want to mention my 25th spot, which UNC will most likely take. I had to pick one team. I don't like Gonzaga's point guard situation. I went with NC State. I don't feel good about it at all. Also looked at St. Mary's, but I still think Gonzaga is going to be better than St. Mary's, so that wouldn't make a lot of sense for me to rank St. Mary's and not Gonzaga. I looked at Notre Dame, Washington, Providence, Georgetown, Auburn, Davidson, Georgia. But I think ultimately NC State is the safest pick in that group, so I went with them as my placeholder.
All right, yeah, I'll buy that. And Georgia is an interesting one that I didn't really think about in terms of like the Edwards-Claxton thing could be really fun. Like that'll be like a draft Twitter thing. I can't wait for like all the draft Twitter folk to be tweeting about how much Georgia they're going to watch this season, even though they're like a bubble team.
Well, I think the thing with Georgia is, I mean, is Edwards going to play point guard? Because if not, they do not have a single point guard.
I think they're going to play fans, yeah.
Yeah, so they have Edwards, Tyree Crumple's a double-figure scorer, kind of a undersized scoring combo type-ish, more of a two. And then they have Hammonds and Claxton's a really strong front court. They added Christian Brown and Jaquan Walton, who were top 75 recruits. So I mean, they have a lot of things brewing. I'm just not quite sold on the point guard just yet.
Fair, yeah. So yeah, I mean, those are our top 25s. We will certainly have plenty more reaction, and mine will change because like I just have such a hard feel of doing this right now, given the just like there's so many challenges of like figuring out like who's going to be there, figuring out like not just like guys who are going to leave, but like recruits, transfers. Like there's just so much that's going to happen in the next 2 months roster wise before we can even have like a sense. So yeah, I mean it'll be very interesting. But I think I like your top 25 more than mine, which is kind of saying something. So even though I do disagree on St. Mary's and I disagree heavily on I like Ohio State more than I like Louisville, and I also disagree with a few other of your rankings, but I like yours a lot.
So quickly, just kind of the biggest sticking points here with the people. No Auburn was the biggest one. We talked about that. Got a little no Gonzaga, which we explained it's point guard, but even without the point guard, I mean this is a super young team, undeniably talented, but a lot of freshmen in that 40 to 80 range. I know a lot of people like Anton Watson, but then I mean Norvell I think is a good best player for next year. But then after that, I mean Tilly, he's good. He's more of like a intangibles guy. Like he moves his feet well. He hits open 3-pointers. I'm not sure how he would do as like the second best player on a really good team. And then Kispert is fine, right? But after that, I mean it's very young. Like they're going to need Philip Petrusev to make a jump, and then the point guard situation obviously speaks for itself. Iowa, I mean, I think probably Tyler Cook leaves and then they move down, and this isn't a sticking point, but I mean, they bring a lot back. They only lose Bear, right? Garza's awesome. Bohannon's awesome. I think 9 is perfectly reasonable there. Arizona, that's one you just got to make your top 25, and Arizona will fly up, right? Before you even blink an eye. Creighton, I'm all in. I mean, they return everyone except for 2 reserves in Cashaw and Joseph, and then Frawling did nothing as a freshman. If Krompel comes back, this team finally healthy. Zagorowski missed some time. Damian Jefferson missed some time. They have a really strong top 8 right now. Epperson missed most of the season. And then lastly, the other big sticking point was no Nova, which we touched on, and then a little Louisville. That's about it.
All right. Yeah. Before we wrap up, give me one mid-major that you have sneaky consideration towards, because I have one that I like that I don't know what you'll think of, and I definitely did not rank them now. I was pretty clear that I wasn't going to rank them, but I gave them some thought.
New Mexico.
Wow.
Buying the talent. I'm not. I'm going to have them as a top 40 team, I think, tentatively.
Okay. All right. I'm staying in the Mountain West for this one. San Diego State.
Okay.
Losing McDaniels sucks, because if he was there, this should – I don't get anyone who didn't rank them.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Matt Mitchell, very good. Malachi Flynn.
He's also
a legit best player in the Mountain West type level player, right? He's really, really good. KJ Fegan, 17-5 in the West Coast Conference. Pretty identical to Devin Watson as a player. You bring back Jordan Shakel, who was fine. Nate Mensa was interesting this year. They're still active, kind of recruiting. I don't think they're getting. I don't think they're getting the other McDaniels now that he's going. Now that Jalen's gone. But I mean, still, that's a team right there, man.
Absolutely. I mean, if they could add a 3, like somebody who could shoot from the perimeter. Malachi Flynn addition kind of reminds me of Nigel Williams-Goss. Goss was a better player, but that's the level of transfer that we're talking about. A guy who could have just gone to the NBA and maybe get a 2-way or be a high level summer league, G League player, but chose to transfer. A couple other mid majors I'm keeping an eye on. Obviously, Utah stayed at the top. We touched on Gonzaga, St. Mary's, and New Mexico, and San Diego State. New Mexico State, kind of a weird team. They played so many guys, but they have a lot of those guys coming back. Harvard is one I got to comment on. They're going to be really good if Towns and Aiken are back. UTEP is Transfer City. if that blends right, I mean, they can be pretty good. And then in the A10, Davidson, they return, I think, mostly everybody.
I think they lose.
Definitely all their main contributors. Who are those?
Dude, does Davison not lose Goodmanson? Oh,
I think he's back.
He's back. Never mind. I'm wrong. He's really
Dayton could be good, and URI I think is sneaky. They under the radar played really well to end the year, and then I don't see the Memphis stuff at all. I mean, Martin was so good. They're gonna need more than what they have.
Well, yeah, the Memphis stuff to me, like any ranking of Memphis has to include the caveat of like they're getting Trendon Watford, RJ Hampton, and maybe Lester Quinones.
Yeah.
Like, if you do that, then you're like a Kentucky level class, and I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
It's still Penny and not Cal, but I'm fine with it. Like, top 50. Hypothetically, if they got all three of those guys, where would you rank them?
So lineup would be probably RJ Hampton, Tyler Harris, Watford, Jeffries, and Wiseman?
Yeah. All freshmen, except for
Tyler. And a sophomore in Harris.
It's Kentucky. It's Kentucky.
Yeah, I think I'd throw him in maybe 21 in between Ohio State and Texas Tech.
Wow. That feels low. I don't know. Like, it's very hard for me not to just, like, throw top 10 juice on them. But it's also, like, let's go, like, one step further on the hypothetical. You give that roster to Calipari.
Let's see. I'm trying to think. So you would have two, like, of his normal lottery talent with Wiseman and Hampton. The thing with Wiseman though, he's more of the prospect than the player type, right? And then Carey's more of Carey and Stewart are more player than prospect.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Wiseman's thing is his motor, right? It's like because you don't get like the top James Wiseman is really, really good, but you don't get the top James Wiseman every game.
And like he's like a mid-range shooter too. Like I'm not sure he has like a consistent three ball, which doesn't matter so much for college. But they also, I mean, they would have a deep bench though because they would have Lomax and Jones as sophomores. They'd have Isaiah Maurice, who's a decent player at center as a senior. They'd have Quinones. Yeah, maybe I would bump them up to 13 in between Maryland and Creighton.
Yeah, top 15 to me. I think it's probably the right move. But, I mean, they're going to be fun if that happens. Like, that would be really interesting.
Absolutely.
Anyway, yeah, I think
this was fun. I love the speculation for next year.
I mean, that's the fun part of the next 2 months for us, really, Brad. It's like the pod every week will be like what happened in transfer news and recruiting and draft news, and how is that going to impact next season? And I think that's something we have a lot of fun with. We hope you will enjoy it as well, loyal listeners of the pod. And then, of course, summer will be deep dive season as it was last year, and we'll get real deep on teams. And I would love to look back at our deep dives. We'll also look back at our bets at some point soon, Brad. But I would love to look back at our deep dives and see how many we nailed and how many we missed. Because I think for one thing, like Nebraska, like we crushed it, right?
Yeah, it was. They have no depth, and they were playing well with their guys. One injury, and the whole Jenga board collapsed.
And even when they were playing well with their guys, they were closer to a bubble team than top 25, which is what we both said. We said they're probably a tournament team, but they're like halfway, like they're mid-pack in the Big Ten and a bubble team. They're not like a top 25 team. And then Copeland gets hurt and they fall off the rails. But yeah, I mean, like we nailed that one, for instance. We nailed UCLA.
Well, I had said that they were going to make the tournament. I had them as an 11 seed, but I was and so were you. We were vehemently against them as a top 25. It was funny. Like the day before the season, I had this guy. He was like, "You don't know what you're talking about. UCLA, Washington, and Oregon are all top 25 teams. Like no questions asked." Like 2 weeks later, they're all out of the top 25. But like with Oregon, so I had them 24th in the preseason, which was literally lower than anybody. I'm going to take credit.
No, you absolutely can, yeah. Like as long as you're like, if you're in the right direction, I think you always.
It's like Price is Right rules.
Yeah. Like seriously, not as a top 25 team, I'll take that one to.
Yeah.
I was right on Hughes.
Yeah. So we'll go over our bets. We'll make fun of my top 100 preseason teams. We'll make fun of my Big East player rankings. I already have a list of some teams that we could look at for a deep dive. So we're in good shape.
We're gonna have a lot of fun over the next couple months. Don't go anywhere. Enjoy the championship game. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Appreciate you listening all year. Thanks for listening.